plus the cost of the actual medication. I was just making that general point. My question actually is about the vitamin D thing. You were saying that vitamin D was very good for combating infections, particularly flu. And for many years we've heard about the wonderful effects of vitamin C. I'm just wondering, what is the difference in the effects between vitamin D and vitamin C when it comes to fighting off flu infections?
They're really complementary. You should take adequate levels of both. And since, evolutionarily we lost the ability to manufacture vitamin C some many millennia ago, actually, human health and lifespan has suffered. In fact, in the latest issue of our magazine, we put out, if you join the NHF, we put out a magazine which you would get, and in it is an article. This wasn't out on, a few copies were out on the table. There's an article by one of our supporters, Bill Sardi, and you can just Google his name, Bill Sardi, S-A-R-D-I, and he has a wonderful wealth of information on just that point, and how vitamin C, how human lifespan will be extended by adequate levels of vitamin C consumption, because there's a real easy chart that has been made or could be made, and it shows for mammals, those who still produce vitamin C, you line them up at the lower end by weight. Take a shrew or the smallest mouse on the far left. I'm sorry I didn't do a chart for it. And then you go to the right-hand side and you have like an elephant. And then there are all the other species in between organized by weight. And there's an even line, virtually even line that goes from left to upper right that shows what the vitamin C consumption, or not consumption, but manufacture actually is for that particular individual, or individual species. It tracks, like the elephant, it'll produce 40 grams a day. Don't quote me on that, it's not that, but it's something like that. And then the shrew might produce, 50 micrograms a day. But anyway, it tracks their weight, and there's a consistent line there. So you take a human and you put that human where it would fit in between whatever it is, the orangutan and whatever else, and see, well, the orangutan wouldn't be there because they lost the ability to manufacture vitamin C as well. But anyway, you put the human in there, see where that line falls, and it falls somewhere around 10 grams a day. So the normal human would have been making, if he or she had the genetic ability to do it, would be making 10 grams of vitamin C a day. And our lifespan would be appreciably lengthened because of it. And when I say lengthened lifespan, I'm not talking about being in a wheelchair for 80 extra years. I'm talking about being like you and I are right now for an extra 80 years. And that is possible. It can be done, despite the mythology about it. They want to get rid of us and get the dead weight off the social security systems in all these countries. We're holding it back for the young people. So they want us to die off. Die, die, die is sort of the mantra. They don't say it directly, but they'll kill you off. And one of the ways to do it is to eliminate these natural remedies that would help keep you living a healthy older age, a lifespan that's longer and more productive and useful. So, but anyway, vitamin, I kind of strayed a bit because it was an interesting topic to me, maybe not to you. And vitamin C would complement the vitamin D because it helps hype up the immune system too, but through different mechanisms. Oh, there you are, sorry.
Hello. Given the history of elites and funding eugenics projects like the Rockefellers, and how they have a link into the UN and actually the WHO, Codex Alimentarius, are connected together, do you think that Codex Alimentarius is operating basically on a eugenics front, and that they're promoting that it's good for the people? In other words, as the United Nations have a document saying that the Earth population levels are too high, do you think the Codex Alimentarius is a tool in lowering population levels worldwide?
Well, there are kind of two sub-questions there. Is it being done deliberately or is it being done inadvertently? And it's a tough question to answer, and I know one organization, a couple of organizations that claim that it is. And that's probably where you're coming from, is these other organizations who claim this, particularly one in the United States. I myself personally, honestly, and I've probably been the health freedom activist of all health freedom activists, if I may be immodest, that's attended the most Codex meetings, and I've never once seen evidence of that, never once. But that's not to say there aren't people there who might have that in mind. But The Codex staff I've always found helpful. They think they're doing the right thing. The FAO staff has been actually quite marvelous in many respects, believe it or not. Usually where I've had problems, it's been with some of the delegates who are promoting their agendas, like the EC delegate at the CCNFSDU meeting, but coincidentally not the EC representative at the CCFL meetings in Canada that deal with the GM food labeling. Actually, we work hand in glove with them because they're opposed to the American and Canadian government practice, but they don't want the informers, the consumers to be informed about GM foods. They want it kept off the labels so you'll be ignorant and not know that you're buying GM foods. So in that instance, we work with the EC. But back to the question, I haven't seen any evidence of it. That's not to say, though, that the inadvertent effect of Codex once it's fully implemented. But keep in mind, it's an ongoing multi-level process on many different fronts. It's not a monolithic thing. The inadvertent effect will be to harm the health of the human population on this planet. But the eugenics part of it, I'm not buying right now. But I keep an open mind and I keep looking for it. I just haven't seen it. But then I haven't been privy to dark room, smoke-filled meetings, by the insiders either. So there you go. There you are.
When you were talking about health fraud earlier on and supplements being more regulated, would that transfer into practices like acupuncture, reflexology, and
Well,
yoga?
Codex has no jurisdiction over acupuncture or any drug thing. It just deals with food. It doesn't even have any jurisdiction over herbs. So when you hear Codex will affect herbs adversely, that's false. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and there are a lot of things to blame on Codex, but there are a lot of things that's actually very innocent of, and that's one of them. But, however, like Ian Crane said about it being a template, that's not to say that there aren't other mechanisms that will come into effect, both in the EU and globally, that would impact acupuncturists or the others. So, and just the general climate that will tend towards monopolistic practices and suppressing competition would be a threat to, acupuncture, our acupuncture's continued existence. Oh, there you go.
Will there be any truth in the Codex having, because it's a standard, if a country has its own standard, because there isn't, in Ireland here there isn't a standard already. If a lot of nutritionists and scientists and professional people come together and create another standard that Ireland has, is there any possibility of that combating it?
Well, that's the famous so-called two-step Codex process that's being pushed by one group in particular. And I'm not buying that because there's so much an interlocking web of treaties and agreements, and just the sheer psychological pressure of all these other countries adopting Codex guidelines and standards, that the domestic legislation inevitably of Ireland and the United States would be forced to change in accordance with it. I mean, in theory, one could have a really strong stance and perhaps make it stick, but for Ireland, no hope of that because you're already committed by what Brussels says. So you can go to Irish Parliament all you want, and you're wasting your time mostly because those decisions are out of your hands already. You have to abide by the European Union's food supplements guideline, no matter how hard you lobby Dublin. And so I wouldn't put any hope of that at all in the European Union. And in third world countries, there's a small chance of it, but not likely because they have a very strongly regulatory mindset and they aren't oriented that way at all. The only two remaining hopes in the world are South Africa and the United States, and that's really it. I had the good fortune to go to South Africa for one of the Codex meetings a year ago, and I was very pleasantly surprised to see that those health food stores there compare favorably, maybe even more favorably, than with those in the U.S., which I think are quite good. I mean, anything in the U.S. I could get in the South African health food store, even beyond that, because they, for instance, were selling L-tryptophan, which was illegal for a while in the U.S. because Prozac was coming on the market. So they suddenly found a problem with tryptophan and took it off the marketplace so Prozac could come in. and they could have all these school children shootings from Prozac and all the other stuff later, and blame it on guns when in